Okay, now I'm going to show you some of the other Camera Raw things that you can do in here. I'm not going to show you all the tools. We've already seen the basic menu. Um, I'm going to show you some of the other ones. Number one, I'm going to fix this up. For as far as I'm concerned, it's a little bit on the gray side, so I know that contrast handles gray, so I'm going to take out some of that gray feeling, and you can sort of see the difference between the two. So I'm going to lift that up. It's a little dark as well, so I'm going to bring up the exposure, maybe some of the highlights, maybe bring the shadows down. So I'm just going to do a little bit of everything, boost the clarity a little bit on that. Okay, now suppose I just want to see what it looks like. Maybe I want to brighten some of these blues, okay? So there's some different things in here. This is just, I'm not going to worry about tone and curve. We're going to skip over that one. I'm going to have you skip over the detail. Let's go to HSL Grayscale. It's the one that looks like these three things here. And in here I've got, it deals with color. It's got hue, saturation, and luminance. Luminance is the amount of color, so I can hit specific blue, or I mean specific colors. So if I can match the colors up in here, I'm going to go with my blues and see what happens if I pull the luminance down in the blue. So I can change that blue flower to a white flower, or really boost that color up. And what it does is it hits just that color. Now, you want to be careful with that. You don't want to do anything goofy with it where you make it look really fake and you know, it's very obvious that it looks almost like it was painted on top. So while, yes, you can change the colors a bit, you want to be careful with these things, but I really want to make that pop a little bit more. I know that there's a little bit of purple in there, and again, I want to be careful that I don't, you know, wreck it. And I don't think I want to do anything with my greens at all, because that would sort of distort the background. I want this to sort of show up in here. Saturation is also how much of that color is in there. So I'm watching this edge down here. I don't want to get too carried away with it. Okay, and hue is actually changing the physical color itself. So you could technically take that blue and push it one direction or the other, sort of, you know, on the color scale. It doesn't really let you take blues and turn them to oranges, but it does allow you to sort of manipulate the color a little bit. Okay. All right, so there's that. And I'm going to go back here and maybe boost up my exposure just a tiny bit more. So I brighten the blues, but yet not overly so that it's really noticeable. Another thing these are lens corrections. Don't worry about those things. The FX menu, I do use that. Grain allows you to put grain in your image, and you can see how it gets grainy. I don't really use that a whole lot, but I do use post-crop vignetting. And what that does is it just sort of brings in your eye to a central focal point. So I just want you to keep that in mind. I'm going to come back to that then. I'm going to show you some of these things up here. We're going to stay away from the eyedropper tools, but if you hover over them, it sort of tells you what they are. So a crop tool. I want this to be more on the rule of thirds line. So I'm just going to grab my whole picture and sort of decide where I want that crop to be. Maybe I'm going to bring it in like this. And then if I like it, I just hit enter, and so it sort of zooms in on that. Straightening tool. This is for like if you had a horizon line on something, and what you do, like if your horizon line was crooked, you trace this along the horizon line, and then it'll flip your picture for you. But I don't want to do that. Just go back. Okay. But it does allow you to straighten. This is a spot removal tool, like if you had something physically that you wanted to drag or take out of a photo. I'm not going to do that one right now. Adjustment brush allows you to physically adjust a specific area. So let me make the size of this a little bit smaller. This is the size of your brush. Okay, the feather is the area around the outside of your brush, so you'll be able to see if I bring a bigger brush. So the feather is from the circle on the inside to the circle on the outside, and it creates sort of a fuzzy area on the outside. And this is how the flow is, how heavy your brush is going to be. All right, so fine, I'll just do this for you real quick. So I want to show my mask, meaning that when I start painting, it will mask out that area. Now, when I've done that, it'll put this dot over top of it to let you know that I've worked in that area. I'm going to turn my mask off, and whatever it was that I had set here, so this was, it had the tint and the temperature all changed on it. So you can sort of see what it does. It changes that specific area. Again, you got to be careful with some of these things. Oh, the saturation is boosted way up. So say I wanted to pull in a little bit of light in that area, just make it look like, I don't know, maybe the sunlight is hitting that area a little bit more. I can start to edit towards that. If I don't like my change, I can just delete that. Okay, that's that tool. Oops, I'm going to go back in here. Another tool is this one, sort of like the adjustment brush tool. This is sort of the same thing, only it's like a shade. So say I wanted to pull this down here, and I want the exposure to be changed gradually over this image like that. So I can pull up my exposure, and now it sort of looks like, doesn't it look like there's a little bit of sunlight streaming in from that corner? So that's what that is for. So it just sort of brings a gradual change across there. And it works really well because the temperature is boosted up in that area as well, okay? So it makes it look, it warms the entire picture up. So here's ways to rotate your images. When I'm finished, I just hit enter, and there it is. So you can sort of see what it did. Those are some of my extra tools that are in here. Okay, so you can fool around with those things. Don't make very, very drastic changes. If you want to, say you did this, but you don't want it to affect the original picture, you can just save it, save in same location, and give it a name, whatever you want to name it, and hit save. And then done. And what it does is it creates a duplicate of one that's in there, so you'll have one that's sort of edited and one that's not edited. Okay, that's how you do your basic edits in Camera Raw.